First of all, I'm very sorry that I'll be speaking in English, and I hope those of you who didn't get a headpiece will just endure 10 minutes. I would like to also thank actually the organizers of this event and in fact the sponsors. There's a lot of cash contribution coming to these types of events, which I think is a very encouraging thing for this country. But also I would like to congratulate in fact the government moves and the leadership of this government. And I'd like to just maybe give you a foreigner's perspective, touching slightly on what has just been discussed on tax incentives. Look, in most countries, people actually have an income and they pay tax on that income. And one of the first lessons I learned when I first came to this country, the first contract I was asked to sign, somebody told me, my salary will be $5,000 net. It's the first time I ever heard that expression. I said, I mean, okay, you will get $5,000 net, but the salary will be whatever, $8,000, and you will pay your taxes, because that's how I understood life to be. And I discovered very quickly in Turkey that I think most people in this room, it would apply to you, applied to me, by the way, when I started working in this country and earning some salary here, I didn't know what tax I was paying, right? Because your employer pays you $200,000 and that's it. Now the government are telling you that they're going to give you some of that money back that you don't even know was taken from you. So that's like an amazing thing. But also, the government is saying something much more important, I believe. This is one of the few countries where capital gains tax is in fact zero, subject to certain conditions. That is an amazing incentive for making investments. Because if you keep cash dormant in a bank, you earn interest on cash, and then you pay some tax on that. Now, what happens here is that if you invest that money, in fact, when an important minister was asking me why I don't register as an Asian investor, because having already made 10 investments in Turkey, I actually said, well, first of all, I don't earn any money anymore, so I'm an investor, but I don't have an income. So I don't need to, and it's a shame that I didn't, but it doesn't really bother me. But I told them what incentivized me to invest, let's say, in Turkey as opposed to somewhere else, let's say, is a capital gains tax, which is an amazing value that is already there. And to see that the government are taking these steps, in addition now also to providing certain research grants or people who are doing R&D, and there's a lot of amazing things that are happening here. Plus the market itself is very exciting. How many foreigners are trying to invest in this country? So congratulations to all of you, and maybe you should say thank you instead of criticizing. One lesson I learned in my life. Second thing I'd like to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing now, in the sense maybe some of it will be of any use, of benefit to anybody. I decided when I left the company mid-2011 to in fact make investments in companies. And what excited me about that was, the first thing about it was, of course, my competitive advantage is that I can make a decision quickly, as opposed to going through an institution and all of those things. But I learned also a few lessons, and I can share them with you pretty quick. First of all, this is an amazing market in itself. Demographics, growth, confidence. Customers are confident, they spend money. Customers are underserved. They want things, but they cannot get them. So it's an amazing growth potential in this market. And lots of things can work. Replication can work, innovation can work. It's worth trying. Second, cost of trying is actually very, very low. There's a lot of young, very highly educated, smart people. And the cost of actually them trying to do something while they're young is so low, and the value upside is so high because you're doing it in your own country. I'll give you an example of another investment I made, let's say in Jordan, which is where I come from. And in Jordan, for example, the problem there's a lot of amazing IT companies who grew out of nothing, very, very impressive, but they have no market because their domestic market is very, very small. So they have to sell what they can to the other Arab market, which is extremely difficult because it may look like they speak the same language, but the reality is that there are tax disincentives, there are company restrictions. Jordanian companies cannot do what a Turkish company can do. It is really quite, incredible in that sense. So this is a very, very important advantage. The second one, which probably is worth stating, is when a Turkish company establishes in Turkey, is how best to go internationally, right? Is that to go to this region, let's say Middle Eastern region, go to European region, go to the first world, go to the US, go anywhere in the world. And I think that's in a very, very important area. The lessons I apply to myself, basically, is to invest in companies where I feel, let's say, if I invest in that company, I can add some value to it, as opposed to what return I can get on the money. Okay? It's something which is specific to me. But what I have noticed in doing that is that it makes the relationship a lot more interesting. And what I have found in all of these fascinating angel funds operating, and also venture capital funds, and even private equity, by the way, which in the end should be what you should be thinking, because that is what you need next, right? And there's amazing private equity groups in Turkey, enormous potential here. And what fascinated me most about this is how much Turkish money is actually now invested in these things. I know, for example, in 2005, when I first came and we were looking at Turk Telecom would have to list in 2008, everybody was telling me that Turks don't buy stock because Turks had a bad experience. Turkey went through a very hard time in the past, and I know about the hard times, which is why maybe now you have good times and you have strong leadership, which is allowing you to go in those directions, and that is very exciting. But even what I saw in my time, I was pushing a lot of the staff to actually buy stock. And one of the things we did is, instead of giving them cash bonuses, we were actually converting that into stock. We would buy stock on their behalf and hold it for them. And most people are very nervous that he wants to have the cash as opposed to have the shares. And every single person, of course, some were not given the choice, but every single person that kept that, like we would say, for 1 year you have to hold, don't sell it, ended up actually making a lot more. And that is the culture that is now, I have seen no change, coming from confidence, because the confidence of the investor and the consumer is what, so you are in a very privileged situation with strong leadership and government that is making decisions, and the right decisions, but at least you are getting decisions. Most countries are not even making decisions. Second, the market itself is so promising to invest in your country, and and that's what I'm doing. I can tell you right now that 99% of my investments are actually in this country, because I think it's the best place for me to invest. And I think, I don't know what my time is, but 3 more minutes. Right, okay. So in 3 more minutes, I can just say that my focus has been on IT internet companies, which is something that I'm supposed to know. Although I'm very skeptical about anybody who tells me he knows anything about this subject, including myself, because things change so quickly, out of nothing, which is an amazing thing. Something different I did is I invested in geothermal. I saw a great potential in Turkey for that a subject I know nothing about, and I learned that the potential of this, and that was a very interesting experience for me. And I'm considering now also to do things that I haven't done before, as I find the potential is so exciting, and that of actually learning about things that I don't know anything about, instead of presuming to know things that I may know about, but the market changed so quickly, perhaps I don't. Is that 3 minutes? Okay. Okay. Well, we also moved in the area of asset management, which I have found certainly interesting. But perhaps I could end on maybe one important note, is that one of the lessons that I was telling the people working with me that we should always be careful about is that one of our best successes is likely to be one of our failures. It means that one of those very promising companies or very promising person maybe who's behind, well, anyway, behind any company there are people, it's not the company itself in the end. We will have a failure, but that will lead to a big success. But the company failed. And I was always telling my people, please look out for something like that. Always pick it up and give one more chance. Maybe not always, but think of another chance, because the person that makes a mistake will be learning so much from that and is likely to be a better person to invest in second time. It was just something I mentioned. And then it happened to me, not to my team. It happened to me, and one of the most important person working with me reminded me. I just did it without realizing that I did that. Perhaps that would be one last word of advice. I know that there's a lot of angel funds here who obviously try, and just look out for those who failed the first time, and just give me their name. Thank you.
It's a great speech, but I have one question for you. What are the differences between in Turkey and in the other countries in this region in terms of the investor approach? And the second thing is in terms of founders' behavior, entrepreneurs' behavior. What are the differences between Turkey and the other countries in this region?
Trick question. Okay, in terms of investors, it's difficult to, if by the region you mean Middle East, Arab investors generally don't like very much venture capital. They don't like early stage. And by the way, the name of this room is Ma Bain, which means in between. And it's an Arabic word, but it means in between, which means early stage. And so, coming from early stage. So Arabs generally don't like venture capital. And also, when they invest in something, they like to invest straight in a company. They don't like to invest in a fund, which I think is a problem, because it's not efficient for them to do that, but that's what they like. They like to know where their money is going, which I think is a sign of basically risk, because Middle East has a lot of risk and they're afraid. In Turkey, generally, there's a discourse against investment, I noticed, which has improved, a lot. But I think, like I indicated earlier, Turks in the end are investing in their own market. So it's an easier decision, and I'm happy to see that things are actually moving here a lot faster. For example, if you are a Saudi investor, happen to be investing in Saudi Arabia, that is a good thing, because Saudi Arabia is probably the best market. But if, let's say, you are Lebanese and you want to invest in Saudi Arabia, that's a tough thing, a lot of difficult regulations. Egypt is another very, very, very promising market, and a lot of very smart young companies, and they are going through a period now, and they will get out of it, because what they have now is 1,000,000 times better than what they had before, and what they will have in the future will be 1,000,000 times better than what they're having now. So these are areas, and also I'm surprised when I go there. I don't see Arabs taking risk there, because also there are some cross-border difficulties. In terms of founders of companies, I think they're all the same. Founders of companies. They're generally people who are taking a risk, and they are always very overconfident. And maybe some advice there about being overconfident is they gain a lot by listening to people who have done it before. Maybe one of the important things is that learn from the mistakes of others, I would say, because learning from people's mistakes is better than making your own, or it's a lot cheaper. But in terms of founders, I find them all the same. In the whole region, world. Yeah. In the whole world, I mean, I don't want to say anything culturally sensitive either way, I think, but all founders are interesting people, but they should listen, and they should have someone that forces them to listen.
Okay. So we have 1 more minute. Who has a question for Paul?
Would it be possible for you actually to share some quick success stories, I would say, just to take it as an example actually, and to encourage the investors and the founders? Thank you.
Quick success stories. Actually, in Jordan, I should say, not something that I did, but something which fascinated the market. In Jordan, a startup company started a business which later was bought by Yahoo for some incredible number, and right now I can't remember what the number is, but it was like 150 or something, 80 or something $1 million. And this happened more than 10 years ago. And just that single success spinned off an amazing move of people wanting to do the same, meaning investing in IT and learning, and actually developed an amazing thing which was of export value. A similar angel fund to some people I've seen here called Oasis in Jordan has started now over 100 companies in a small country like Jordan, and I think the employment out of that is an enormous number. And it doesn't really matter how many of these companies succeed or don't succeed. I think the main thing, frankly, is trying. And I can tell you one thing maybe that's very important. Success on one opportunity doesn't mean that you're going to succeed on the next. So if I were to answer your question in a nice kind of like practical way, the way I do it, I frankly look for failures. I don't look for successes. I look for failures either because you can pick them up and help them again, or learn about what not to do, what doesn't work. Because if you eliminate what doesn't work, you're already on a higher probability of success. But trying to emulate what somebody succeeded in doing is like trying to calculate how come Nokia today is a failure, out of in just a short time. I mean, how did that happen, right? So that is like, at least that's what I do. Of course, I'm fascinated by successes. I read about successes, but I'm more looking for the failures.
Thanks for question and answer. It was full of wisdom. Thanks very much. See you. Bye.